Hello, good morning. How come, sir? Yeah. हाँ, MS टीम का अकाउंट IT वालों आपको भेज देंगे, मेल पे आ जाएगा आपको। अच्छा, तो मैं IT टीम को बता दूंगा कि वो आपको जल्दी से भेज दे और कोडिंग निंजा का भी अकाउंट मैंने भेज दिया है, सो यू शुड गेट इट। Am I audible and screen is visible to you? Okay, thank you. Let's discuss two small topics. One is instance initializer and second one is static initializer block. Okay. So there is a class main. It has got two data members, I and j. We have got an initialization block. A block is identified by opening brace and closing brace. The block is identified by opening brace and closing brace. So we have a class. These are the data members. This is the initialization block. This is the constructor. Clear? I'm creating three objects, obj1, obj2, obj3. Main obj1 is equal to new main 1, 2. New obj2 is equal to main 3, 4. Main obj3 is equal to new main 5, 6. So the first step that is executed is the initialization block for each and every object. That means first step, j will be assigned 30, I will be assigned 40. You are displaying the value of I and j, which will be 40 and 30. Then in the main, what I do, I get two parameters over here, x and y, which is 1 and 2, and those will be assigned to I and j. So those values which are 40 and 30 will be now changed to 1 and 2. So this will be 1, this will be 2. Clear? So step 1, remember that always the initialization block will be executed, then the constructor, then the constructor. So before constructor, something called as a initialization block is executed. To prove it, when I create this particular object, what should happen is it should display 30 and 40. And then it should display the value of I and j, which is 1 and 2. Okay. So let's comment the other objects. And if you run the code over here, so what is the first step we are getting? The value of I is 40, the value of j is 30. And when the object is created, first after executing the initialization block, it is going to go to the constructor. It is going to receive the value 1 and 2, which is nothing but x, value of x and y, which are assigned to I and j, and I am displaying the value of I and j, which is 1 and 2. Now this is done for each and every object. That means if I create a second object, the second object also, first step, what we are going to do, we are going to have a separate value for I and j, which is 40 and 30, and we are going to assign the value 3 and 4. So the value of I and j is 3 and 4. So let's run it again. So if you look at the output over here, each and every object has a separate copy of I and j. We call it as a data members. Values are 40 and 30. Because of this 1 and 2, those values are assigned 1 and, sorry, these values are changed to 1 and 2. For the next object 3 and 4, again first step is the initialization block is executed, which will have the value 40 and 30, and then it will have the value 3 and 4. Is it clear to you? Is it clear? For each and every object, step 1, initialization block is called, and after that constructor is called. So no matter how many objects you create, this is step 1 and this is step 2. Now look at this code. There is something called as initialization block. There is something called as a static block. And static block can access only the static data. Static block can access only the static data. Whereas initialization block can access static data as well as non-static data. Remember this. Static block can access only and only static data. So we have a class test with one static data and one data as integer j. Okay. In the static block, I am assigning the value 10 to I. The static block is called, that should be displayed. Okay. We don't have any initialization block over here. If you look over here in the main, I'm not even, there are two classes. There is a class test, there is a class test. I'm not even creating an object. If you look over here, no object has been created. No object has been created. So when I say SOP test.I, what should happen is, it should first execute the static block. It should first execute the static block. Okay. It should assign the value 10 to I, this particular data members, and I should get the output static block called. So if you run the code over here, I will get static block called. I will get static block called. And then I display the contents of I, which is 10. Which is 10. Are you with me? So a static block is called as soon as the class is loaded. That means first class is test, second class is main. As soon as I say test.I, this class should be loaded. It should execute the static block. It should assign the 10 to I, and it should display it. Second concept. What will happen if I say test t1 equal to new test opening bracket closing bracket. Sorry. Okay. And let's have a constructor over here. Oh no, let's have an initialization block. Let's have an initialization block. And let's assign the value I is equal to 100. No, let's first only do it for j. J is equal to 100. Okay. And then I am saying SOP, remove this and say t1 dot I plus t1 dot j. Step 1. There is a class test with two data members, static int I and int j. What is the meaning of static? Static means it belongs to the class. That means there is only one copy of it. There is only one copy of it. Then we have integer j. Then we have integer j. That means each and every object will have a separate copy of it. Each and every object will have a separate copy of it. Okay, done. When I say SOP test.I, what has happened? I haven't created any object. So initialization block will not be called. Only static block will be called. I is 10. So we should get static block called and then it should display the value of 5, which is 10. Then I'm creating an object of a test class and I'm creating an object of a test class. What has happened is t1.I I'm displaying. Okay. So what is t1.I? t1.I is 10 and then I'm saying t1.j. But when you create an object, what should happen? It should assign the value using an initialization block. So for each and every object, an initialization block will be called. So t1.j should display the value as 100. Let's run this. So if you look over here in the output, the static block is called only and only once when the class is loaded. That's it. It won't be called again and again. To illustrate, let me copy this, paste it, and instead of static, I will say initializer block called. Okay. I will create two objects. Let's make it as T1. Let's make this as T2. This is T2. This is T2. Okay. And then run it. And when you run it, what will happen? Step 1, static block called is called only once. This is called only once. Okay. This test.I SOP is going to display 10. Then I'm saying test T1 is equal to new test. Test T1 is equal to new test. So what is T1.I going to do? T1.I is going to pick up the value which is 10, which was initialized to 10. T1.j, this initialization block which was called before assigning the value. Can you see the output over here? Initialization block. So that will be displayed. So you will get 10 and 100. Next time when you create an object, second object is created, again it will go to the initialization block, this particular block. Okay. So again it is going to say initialization block called and it is going to display 10 and 100. So if you look at it, what is the understanding from this particular code is, static block called only once. Called only once. It can initialize only static data member. Yeah. Initializer block can access both static and non-static data. Okay, it can access both of them. Block is executed for each object created. Okay, block is executed for each object created. That means what? For this particular class, this is called only once. Okay, static data, static block can access only static data. If you try to access this, it will give an error. This is a normal block. This normal block is called for each and every object, test1 as well as test2. Secondly, this block can access both the data. What do you mean by this? I is equal to, change it to 12. Okay, over here in the static block, it was 10. In the initializer block, it is 12. So let's try understanding this. So because of this particular line, what should happen? First, it should execute this. So we should get static block called. Test.I should display the value of I, which is 10. Test T1 is equal to new test should take me to this particular block. This block is changing the value of I to 12, J to 100. Initializer block should be first displayed. And then when you come over here, I'm displaying the value of T1.I, which should display 12 and 100. So when I create a second object and display T2.I and T2.J, what it should display? It should display 12 and 100. Clear? Let's run this and check it. So point number 1, static block called. Okay, there is no need to create an object. Directly it will say static block called, this particular block. In this block, what is the value of I? 10. So this test.I should display 10. Test T1 is equal to new test. So what should happen? It should go to the initializer block. What is the value assigned for I? 12. What is the value assigned to J? 100. What should be displayed? Init block. So init block is called. Then what I'm doing, I'm displaying the contents of T1I and T1J. So what it is displaying? 12 and 100. Then what I'm doing, I'm saying test T2 is equal to new test, SOP T2.I and T2.J. So what should happen? It should first display initializer block called, and then it should display 12 and 100. Is it clear to you? Yes, no? I mean to say, are these points clear to you? Static block called only once. It can initialize only static data member. Initialization block can access both static and non-static data executed for each and every object. Both of them are called before constructor. Both of them are called before constructor. So before constructor coming into the picture, they are called. Anything with static keyword is initialized only once. I think you're getting confused over here. See, I never say static will get initialized only once. I said static block will be executed only once. This is a block. This is a block. Okay, opening. This block is identified by opening brace, closing brace, in which the value of I is 10. Here I am changing the value of I to 12. So in a span of a program, you can change the value of I n number of times, but the block will be executed only once. Is it clear? Static variable. The moment I create an object, both static as well as a non-static variable will be not variable. Data member will be 0. Only the local variable will have the garbage value, and it will give me an error. Is it clear? So where it will be useful for you in the MCQ questions, this will be useful for you. You should always remember step 1 static, step 2 non-static block, step 3 constructor, step 3 constructor. Clear? So have a look at the code, have a look at this particular code, and by having a look at this particular code, tell me what should be the output of this particular code. There is a class test, there is static data, there is a static block, there is a constructor. I'm creating two objects. What should be the output of this code? So step one, as I said, static block called will be called. Step two, as soon as I create an object, constructor will be called. As soon as I create a second object, constructor will be called. So the output is static block called, constructor called, because static is called only and only once. So let's run this. So when you run it, what I get? Static block called, constructor called, constructor called. What will happen if I do something like this? Pay attention carefully. T. What will happen if I do something like this? Will it give an error? Will it run? If it runs, what should be the output? See, I'm not using new. I'm not using a new keyword. I'm simply saying testy. So when I run the code over here, the output will be the same. The output will be the same. Why same? Why the constructor not called is called? Because object is not created. It is thus reference variable. When I say test t, memory is not allocated for t. Remember, memory is not allocated. It is allocated only when we use new test. Only when we use new test. Clear? Understood? Yes, no? Okay, let's confuse you again. So let's say system.out.println and say new test. What do you think should happen? Here what I did, I never say test t1 is equal to new test, test t2 is equal to new test. Okay, I'm ignoring it. But here I'm saying new test. Here I'm saying new test. Okay, so let's see. Let's run this again. So when you run it, what will happen? Point number one, static block called. Okay, static block called. Done. Then since I'm saying new test, what should happen? It should go to the constructor, because new test means what? You're creating an anonymous object. What do you mean by anonymous object? Object is not, you haven't given a name to it. Have I said test t1 is equal to new test? No, I simply said new test. So what happened? It went and executed the constructor. That was this one. Okay. But then what happened was, first I'll explain without this. Okay. Let's see what happens when I do it. If you look over here, the output is same like the previous program. Static block, constructor call. Yes or no? If you look at the previous example, what it was? It was test t1 is equal to new test. Right? Understood? But if I remove this, no, first let me have. So in this case, how will you read this? You will read this as follows. Test is the name of the class, t1 is a reference, new is used to create this particular object by using this constructor, okay. And when I say new test, what it means, create an anonymous object. Why anonymous? Because you haven't mentioned the object name. So create an anonymous object and make a call to the constructor. Hence we get static block and constructor. Clear? Understood? Now if I say system dot out dot println T1, okay, and if I do something like this, then what should happen? Test T1, first of all, static block is called, then test T1 is equal to new test. So what should happen? Constructor is called, will be called, then system.out.println T1. So what will test system.out.println T1 give me? It will give me the hash code. It will give me the hash code. So let's understand this step by step. So when program is loaded, the static block is loaded. So the static block says static block called. This is the first line. I hope it is clear. When I say test T1 is equal to new test, the constructor is called. So we will get constructor called. Then what I am doing, I am saying kindly display T1. But what is T1? T1 is what? T1 is an object. Okay. And it is giving me something like test at the rate 2A1139A55. Some garbage value it is giving me. That is called the hash code of an object. That is called hash code of an object. So whenever an object is created, to keep a track of it, what does Java do? Java creates a hash code of an object. Java creates a hash code of an object. Why it has to do it? Because in case you ask whether this particular object is same as a previous object or another object created, it has to compare the hash code. And if the hash code is same, that means they are the same object. In case they are not, they are the different objects. Clear? So I said SOP T1. So what did it give me? It gave me the hash code. And how? What is the pattern of the hash code? The pattern of the hash code is test. That's the name of the class at the rate some value, hexadecimal value. Are you with me? On the 17th line, I said system.out.println new test. So first, what will happen? New test will be called. So what does new test do? Creates an anonymous object. When you create an anonymous object, what should happen? It should go to the constructor. What should constructor give me? The constructor call should be displayed. But since everything is in SOP, system.out.println, it should display that hexadecimal address or the hashing value of that particular anonymous object, and that is test at the rate 15db9742, some value. Is it clear to you? So what we learned in these three examples, we learned that there is something called as a static block that is called as soon as a class is loaded. We also learned that initialization block is called when the object is created. And then we learned that a constructor is called much after that. That means the constructor is a third entity being called. First static only called once, then initialization block called for each and every object, and then something called as a constructor. Are you with me? That was the first point. The second point was when I say test T1 is equal to new test, it should be very clear to you what is test. It's a class name. What is T1? The reference variable equal to new to create an object. And it is created by using which constructor? Test opening bracket closing bracket. That means the default constructor. So when I create an object and try to display it, what it is going to display? The hash code of an object. The hash code of an object. Okay. And when I say SOP new test, what should happen? New test is going to create an anonymous object. Okay. Why anonymous? Because I'm teaching you constructor. I'm not going to use an object. So I can directly say new test. But if I try to print it, what should I get? I should get the hash code of an object. I should get an hash code of an object. Is it clear to you? Done? Okay, good. So when you'll be working in an organization, okay, sorry before that, one small concept, let me teach you. I forgot. Just a moment, let me just type the code so that I can start explaining the concept. Okay, let's go through this. There is a class test having two data members I and j. There is a constructor, there is a display function. We are displaying the contents of I and j. Is it clear? We have done this n number of times when we are discussing the classes and object. There are two classes. There is a class test, there is a constructor, there is a display function. I am trying to display the value of I and j. Are you with me? Yes, no? Test T1 is equal to new test. Point number 2. Can I have a function with the same name as a constructor? Can I do that? Can I do that? See, there is a class test. This is a constructor. Why constructor? Because it does not have a return type. But there is a function called as test which has got a return type. And can I make a call to it? And here I'm saying plus equal to. That means it should increment the value. And there is a display function which displays the value of I and j. So let's say test T1 is equal to new test. So what happens? It goes over here. The constructor is called, it assigns the value 10 to I, 12 to j. Right? Done. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to make a call to the function T1 dot this particular function. Fine. And then I'm going to say T1 dot display. Understood? So what is happening when I say test T1 is equal to new test, control comes over here, goes to the constructor, assigns the value 10 and 12 to I and j. T1 dot test makes a call to this function called increment the value of I and j. So I becomes 20, j becomes 24, and when I make when I make a call to display, it should display I and j, which is 20 and 24. Are you with me? Yes. Is it clear? Is it clear? Understood? Okay. So I'm not going to continue the class because most of the participants are in that particular National Science Day function, which is going to be till 1:30. Okay. So tomorrow I'm going to continue with this particular classes and objects, and then my plan is tomorrow I'll be discussing classes and object in detail. From day after tomorrow, we are going to start with inheritance. I'm going to start with inheritance. Is it clear to you? Okay. Just give me a day so that I can open your OOPS module in the Coding Ninja, object oriented programming module in the Coding Ninja. I hope you are doing well in the arrays and you must have reached around 50 to 60% of Coding Ninja, right? How was the test? How was yesterday's test? FA? The difficulty level, kindly pay attention. The difficulty level of all the remaining papers will be moderately high, since we have to take into consideration the placement angle also. Okay, it will always be with the inputs from the industry, hence the difficulty level will be a little bit high. Hence, kindly practice all the examples from the Coding Ninja. I'll be uploading certain tests for you, practice tests. Okay. The first practice test will be on Saturday. The second practice test will be on Sunday. The practice test will be for half an hour, 2 coding questions you have to solve. Okay. Some output questions were tricky. So you do. So do you need some MCQ for to be discussed in the class for? Okay, I'll discuss certain MCQs. I'll prepare certain MCQs and I will discuss it so that you are well prepared for your ST and FA2. Okay. So I'll prepare certain MCQs for you, which we could show. I will show it in the class and you could give me the answers for that. So I'll do that. Don't worry. Certain coding questions, certain coding test will be uploaded. Okay. Link will be shared on the mail. Saturday and Sunday are the 2 days, or Saturday and Monday will be the day on which you have to give the test, because Friday you have AWT first test, right? So Saturday and Monday will be the 2 tests, practice tests, 30 minutes to coding question. Yeah, I'll discuss certain extra coding questions with you. Decimal to binary, I'll come back to it when we discuss the number system. I will open it for each and every student so that I can share the score so you understand what is the competition in the class. Okay, fine. Thank you very much. Okay. Yeah, it will be a comprehensive discussion on the binary number system. I'll take the class on one of the days. Okay. Okay, thank you very much. I'll be closing it. Vishal, when I talk about the binary number system, we start with how to find the binary of the number, what is 2's complement, okay, and all these things.